Welcome to the Across the Spoilerverse podcast. I'm your host, X. Change my name. Gonna go. Everyone's gonna be definitely on board with this. They're gonna love it, and they're gonna start calling me X, and I can't wait to start it. As always, I'm joined by Greg Alba from Real Rejects. Greg, how's it going?
It's going well, Elon. I am doing well. Admittedly, I'm going to give this disclaimer up front. I just got back from Comic-Con yesterday. We had a panel. Thank you to all who came out. And I am mentally and physically still recovering from it. So I'm going to do my best just to listen to Paul today. I'm going to be all of you, just listening intently. That's my job.
My plan was to just talk all the time anyway, so yeah, that works out well with me.
His master plan has worked, but we were talking beforehand, and we got some topics to go over today. Moments before, he was like, we should talk about the Spider-Man 4 news, and I was like, what are you talking about, Paul? So there's Spider-Man 4 news regarding the Tobey Maguire one, the Blue Beetle box office, and also Aquaman, Disney possibly selling Apple, and Oppenheimer Barbie news, and probably talk a little bit spoiler talk about Oppenheimer, a movie that was made quite an impact. So yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I can tell you're pretty tired because you've just said Disney selling Apple. That's Bob Iger's selling Disney at Apple. Disney aren't going into Apples, you know what I mean? It's not Snow White where they're doing merchandise.
I appreciate you. I'm going to start my G Fuel journey, and then halfway through, I'm going to be like, all right, I'm ready to start the podcast, Paul. But let's kick this.
Sponsored by G Fuel.
Why don't we start this off with the Spider-Man 4 one, since I could learn about this in real time, since I don't know anything about it. What's going on this story, Paul?
Yeah, so apparently Thomas Hayden Church, aka Sandman, he said that he's heard Sam Raimi is working on Spider-Man 4, which, whoa, pretty crazy if that's true. He said it's a rumor, so, it might be one of those things where he comes out tomorrow and says, actually, guys, I said I'd heard it. It wasn't actually true. It's been taken out of context, that sort of thing. So by the time this podcast releases, might not be real, but for the moment, I feel very excited. I've been thinking about it. I think, live action Miles Morales, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man's the mentor. Would work pretty well in my opinion.
That is a great call. Okay, so you're thinking that this would not be the original, he wouldn't reprise or slightly rework the original Spider-Man 4 story that everyone has pretty much heard about by this point with Vulture and all that. If you guys haven't, it's pretty awesome. And there's also videos and stuff that'll show you some of the concept art that was put together. He wanted it to be his most ultimate Spider-Man movie. No pun intended. But he wanted it to be his epic Spider-Man movie, sure to top Spider-Man 3. That was a big part of it, was a redemption for how Spider-Man 3 turned out. But you're hoping that if this does happen, that it would be a different story, that it wouldn't be about him and Miles Morales?
Well, the Vulture story did kind of get adapted into Homecoming a bit, and I don't know if that would be a kind of redo of it. They might end up, getting that Morbius post-credit scene and playing that off with the Vulture. But personally, I think they should kind of start afresh. How many years has it been? Almost 20 years, maybe less, maybe more. But I imagine in that time, Sam Raimi's had more ideas, and he thought, here's how I would do it differently if I was going to do it. He's now working with the MCU, he's got a lot more toys to play with. And I can imagine Sony would also be like, can you not incorporate this into something else that's really successful too? So yeah, lots of it might be debunked already. If it is, we'll still leave this in to show you how stupid we are. And we've proved we're idiots I have anyway when it comes to the Barbie box office. So yeah, it might as well just leave this in.
I love how wrong you are about that. I love how wrong you are. That's the only thing you're usually right, Paul. Don't discredit yourself too much. You're usually right on the money. I mean, we could end it with the exact quote that I found it. The exact quote Thomas Hayden Church said was, "There's always some kind of." He's got that bottom lip thing. There's always some kind of. I've heard rumors that Sam Raimi was going to do another Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, and if that happens, I would probably campaign to maybe at least do a cameo. Okay, so he didn't even talk with Sam Raimi about this. He probably read something on the internet and was like, what's Twitter? What's X? What are they saying? Yeah. Oh, this must be true. It's on the www page. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably all it is. I feel like actually reading the quote now. I'm like, there's probably nothing to this, even though it would be cool if there was.
Well, we've turned it into clickbait. We've got the people watching. They're
We got it.
hooked. But we've
We
also
got it.
said it might not be true, so we're off the hook because everyone knows as long as when you do clickbait, you say, but it might not be true. Everyone, you can't say shit. So yeah, the Blue Beetle box office is the next topic. Very, very low. It's obviously still got time to make an impression, but you've got to factor in the strike. The actors can't really promote it, and so on. The opening box office prediction for Blue Beetle is between $10 to $17 million, which
Can that be right? That is so. That is so low. It's remarkably low. Like
yeah.
remarkably low.
When I heard it, I was like, that can't be right. That has to be because I seen this a couple of weeks ago on Reddit on the box office thread, and I thought, someone could have just made this up, but now official analysts are reporting that it's going to be that much, and I keep saying it. Yeah, if this does well, great. I'm all for having Blue Beetle as the first hero in the DCU. But if it does badly, gun, please, you just hard reboot it, mate. Let it go. Not gonna work. No one's excited about this universe anymore. No one cares about this franchise. Just please, please let it go. Just kill it. I like Blue Beetle. Yeah, I like him. I like the actor involved. But please, just say sense.
Yeah, I think what could help it. I don't know how much this would help it. Because it's still kind of confusing. Like I think most of us kind of understand where James Gunn is going with the whole DCU universe that he's doing, and he has said that Blue Beetle will be the first character in the DCU, but the first official movie will be Superman Legacy. And I think that if there was some kind of language in terms of promotion, let's just say, for example, I know this is not what James Gunn is saying. Let's say, for example, that the trailer did say the start of the new DC universe. The new DC universe begins. Some trailer line like that. Then I think that would make people a little bit more inclined to check this out because where Blue Beetle, resides is still it's still seemingly like he's part of a universe that's no longer going to matter anymore. And
Well,
yeah, yeah.
the official tagline. I put a joke tweet out the other week explaining it, and people took it seriously. But this is how I put it out. So everyone knows, yeah, Blue Beetle is the first hero of the DCU, but Superman is the first DCU movie. But the first movie released by the DC studios is going to be Creature Commandos. Very simple, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, all the other if it's got Peacemaker and if it's got Waller in the DCU, then it's still connected to the DCEU. So it's not really the first DCU movie or the first hero in the DCU because you've got all these other heroes who are coming across from the DCEU who have already been set up, and they're now the real first heroes in the DCU before Blue Beetle. I can't even get it out myself. You know what I mean? It's pretty messed up. And I'm James Gunn. If you're watching it, I'm just saying, need to hard reboot it. Need to draw a line in the sand and just be like, look, mate, no one cares about this stuff anymore. All the movies are bombing back to back. Just you want to start the new universe off on the best foot possible. Look at what's been successful. The Batman, Joker, off in their own universe. Just start again, please. No one cares about this old universe anymore. I still care, but the numbers aren't there, and the general audience, they definitely don't care.
I mean, we just got to look at what's actually even doing well this year alone. I mean, we're going to go into it later, but you're just looking at the movies that are actually financially performing well. You got to take a page out of that now because the box office trajectory has drastically changed. But while we're on this subject of DC Universe, we should talk about Aquaman being delayed, which did get if I'm going off memory here, didn't it get approved for a few more days of reshoots from James Gunn? Like, here's more money to add to the pile of burning cash right now.
I think they said they got 5 days reshoots, but they did it in 4. I don't know what they're reshooting. I don't know what they're adding in. It might be post-credit scenes or something. I don't know how much you can get done in the space of 5 days, but apparently that's what they had. They got it done in 4, but now they're thinking, with the strikes going on, we're not going to be able to properly promote this.
Right.
Should we delay it to 2024? Now, this is something that they're also thinking about doing with The Color Purple and also June, which with Aquaman, yeah, at this point, I feel they should just drop it. I think if they don't, it's going to be a hangover into the DCU. It'll be next year, and then Superman Legacy's the year after. And I personally think it's going to bomb. I have been wrong in the past with stuff like Barbie, but there doesn't seem to be the hype for this movie that there really needs to be. You've got controversial aspects with it as well, like Amber Heard. We won't get into that, but do people even care about the DCU to the point that they're going to go and see this, especially after all the bombs that they've had back to back, where the audience doesn't care about this movie, like this entire franchise? Personally, I don't think people are going to be rushing to see it. It's been delayed a number of times. It's even swapped release orders with The Flash, and yeah, I just feel like they need to get it out the way, put it out at Christmas, which is its release date currently. I think that's a good time to release it. There's not much other competition around it. I think just get it out, it'll be okay, and then we start a new chapter. We take a year away from DC, a big break, get people excited again to see DC movies, and then you come in with Superman Legacy.
Well, the first Aquaman did phenomenal, though, didn't it? I'm looking here.
Yeah.
It made like over 800 million international, and I know that right now we are struggling for Chinese audiences to watch our movies, our U.S. America movies, but in the international territory, I think Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom would do, because I think people were surprised by just how well it did, and I think I think it could have a bit of a Avatar effect, I'm nowhere near the success of Avatar, I don't want that to be misconstrued. I think it could have a bit of an Avatar effect. Like, let's say that first trailer comes out and it is wow, this is actually mind blowing. Look at this world that they have created for Aquaman 2. This looks so much better than I thought. I want to be a little bit more optimistic about it. However, in this current moment in time, I am definitely on your wavelength of thinking about Aquaman 2, more than likely not doing well. I wonder how much they'll try to hide Amber Heard in the marketing, because whether or not you're for her or against her, I think it would still be casting a negative shadow, just because, the second she's on screen, it's just, people are going to act like she's in every frame of the movie, and it's just going to overshadow like every talk online, at least. And
yeah,
I wonder if the SAG strike is over. Oh, actually, it would be better, so that way you don't have to worry about, like you remember when Ezra Miller couldn't promote The Flash, and that was such a talk about it. Like, Ezra Miller can't talk about it now she's just Mara, so she's not the lead of it. But they would at least position themselves to an excuse for ensuring Amber Heard would not do any rounds of promotions for the movie.
Yeah, and it also makes you feel like they're planning on dragging this strike out as much as possible if they're thinking about delaying movies. And this came from Variety as well, which are a pretty good source with lots of contacts in the industry. So they must be thinking like this strike's going to go on for a long time, which sucks.
Everyone's saying till the end of the year at least. That's what everyone is saying.
That's crazy. What's that? 5 months from now?
I know,
it's 4 months.
Something like that. It's gonna feel long. I mean, we're gonna have releases for a while, but then we're gonna have this gap where there's just nothing. There's gonna be some point in time where there's gonna be like nothing coming out. So I think that's why they have to do the delays, so that way there's something at least spreading, because it's also a fight for cinema, that's been a big part of the controversy of this. Like, yes, we have to support the writers, we have to support the actors. Undoubtedly, that's the most important thing out of all this. The worry part, though, that we haven't even really talked too much about is, like, that's something that Tom Cruise has been fighting for. Even with the SAG strike, there was this thing that came out about how Tom Cruise was trying to at least position during the SAG strike for the actors, the stars of the movies, to at least be able to promote the films because they're trying to make sure that people are still going into cinemas. Well, I think the Barbie Oppenheimer weekend proved that maybe that's not entirely necessary. Regardless, though, yeah, it's a bummer, but the fight must go on. Paul, what is the next story that you really want to talk? What's the one you want to talk about? You want to talk about Disney selling Apple? You want to talk about that one?
Disney are selling apples. You get your limited edition apples from Disney, only $9.99. So Disney, apparently this is apparently Bob Iger's in talks with the CEO of Apple to sell the entire company to him. Now, this is, I'm reading off Fandom Wire here, fandomwire.com. They're saying it's a move that will shake up the entertainment industry, as CEO Bob Iger is reportedly planning to sell the company to Apple. The news has sent shockwaves through the industry, with many analysts and investors questioning the logic of the deal. Now, the report goes into what the logic actually is, and when you think about it, when I first heard it, I was a bit like, but then I started reading into it, and Apple, they've got a vast library of content, and
Definitely.
they've also got a distribution network through not only Apple Plus. I don't know how many people actually watch it, because I think once you get the free trial and that's up, you kind of I'll go watch something else. But everyone's got iPhones, iPads, Apple Macs. There's lots of ways that they can push and sell their services through Apple products.
Right.
And it would, what Fan and Wire are basically saying is that if they did this, it would create a powerhouse that could dominate the streaming wars, as it would allow Disney to accelerate its transition to streaming. And it would basically just make them have a monopoly over the entire industry. Now, just skimming through this report, they're probably apparently the streaming, the company, Disney streaming stuff is looking at an $800 million loss at the moment, in just its third quarter. So they are looking at how can we recoup this money, and we have seen with Disney that there's been multiple losses, pretty much back to back recently, with very few of their films actually even breaking even at the box office. Kathleen Kennedy still has a job somehow. But yeah, lots of their films haven't done that well, and it's getting to that point where it's like, how they're going to sell it. Now, I listen to a lot of different podcasts that go over this stuff, and what they're saying is that Disney, they obviously, when Bob Iger basically made his name buying successful products, so Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, I think as well, they were massive things. But now they've actually all dropped in value. So Disney's lost money because they've bought it for $5 billion or whatever, and it's now worth $2 billion or something. So now they're looking at other avenues to get rid of this and selling some apples, move into the Apple business.
Yeah. How much would they sell it for?
Don't know. I'm looking through this figure. Yeah,
it'd have to be so much money, though.
Yeah, and it depends what it would include as well. Apple probably would, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got a bullet point breakdown here. Can I share my one piece of homework that I did here? I got a quick. All right, here it is. It's this quick bullet point of the pros. Okay, I got 4 sentences here of the pros. Create a massive media entity with global reach and huge content library. That's uno. 2, it could speed up Disney's transition to streaming, help Disney's struggling streaming business, and then here's a big one: increase Disney's presence in China, where Apple is already established. That's a big part. And now the downsides, I got quick sentences here, Paul. Downsides: potential higher prices for customers due to increased market power. Possible job losses at the companies merge their operations, which is just what Disney would want. More unemployment. An impression that Disney is giving up on its own streaming business. I mean, well, yeah. A merger of this size might face legal hurdles and needs approval from the U.S. federal regulators, of course. And this deal would have a huge impact on the entertainment industry if it does happen. I don't know. That could be a pro or a con. So it seems like there's pros and cons. I have heard that they're just planning on selling, because there's subsidiaries of Disney Plus, it's a different name in India or something like that. I don't really know, but I've heard, please correct me in the comments, that they could be just selling the foreign side instead of the U.S. side. But
in England, we've got Star instead of Hulu.
Gotcha.
So you go
Gotcha.
on your Disney Plus, you click your star, it's got your Walking Dead, it's got
Mm,
your Bear on, it's got all the dirty stuff that won't show on Disney, but it's just on Disney Plus.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure it's Hotstar in some countries. But I'm just looking at Apple's company worth 3.3 trillion. So,
Oh, they got
you
money.
know, yeah, and I'm just thinking about it. I said earlier, no one really watches Apple Plus, but if they build it into Disney Plus, you know what I mean? Have all the shows on one big streaming service that people are going to start watching it. It makes sense. Obviously, Bob Iger's pulling from the David Zaslav handbook of just gut the company, sell off as much as you can, get your bonus, and then fuck off. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I
But
think it would take them so long to make a profit, though. Remember, it was like took like Netflix 10 years or something like that to truly make a profit, and I
yeah,
think it
but
would
they'll
take
all
them
be
such a
dead.
long time to make a profit
Yeah,
if they actually did merge.
they'll not care. They'll all be dead by then. But in 50 years' time, there'll be YouTube documentaries. So like, and genius Bob Iger made a groundbreaking deal in selling Disney off to Apple, and it changed the world, and we all became slaves that just constantly couldn't escape the corporation that had infiltrated all aspects of our lives. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he's a dick. He's a dick. To hell with you, Bob Iger. We should talk about Oppenheimer.
yeah. The thumbnail for this was broke the rules because we're playing a bit of stuff here. We're saying how Bob Iger's kind of breaking the rules, selling Disney off to Apple, but Barbenheimer, it's also broken the rules because
Oh
what were
yeah,
the rules 3 months ago? Comic book movies that make loads of money. Let's do as many comic book movies as we can. They don't stop. We just license and print money. They don't stop making money. And then, as we've seen, they don't make that much. But Barbie and Oppenheimer, people keep saying Barbie's like an original IP, but it's like, oh, well, it's been around, around 50 years. I think Barbie's a household name at this point, but it hasn't had a movie at this point. And Oppenheimer's obviously a 3 hour long historical documentary, R-rated, shot purely for cinephiles in 70mm IMAX, but it's doing really well. And both of them are doing great. Again, apologies for being such an idiot and saying that Barbie would flop, but I'm not exactly a box office analyst, guys. Apologies. I know I go on about it every week and pretend
that's
to be
the
one,
main
but
thing we talk about here. Is the
you've
box
caught me
office.
out. You've caught me out again. But yeah, so they've done really, really well. Hats off to them. I think it was a genius marketing push to kind of take these two films that were competing with each other, the two opposite ends of the spectrum entertainment wise, and just turning it into this almost cultural event of like they made it into this. Now I didn't go see them both. I only went to see Oppenheimer, but I know my editors, they were getting t-shirts, going out to see them, celebrating this big event, and lots of people I know went to one and then went immediately to the other, or someone on a Friday and then went to see the other on a Saturday, and they turned it in this big event. And going to the cinema around here, absolutely
Yeah,
packed from 9 a.m. on the Friday, and like my editors were messaging me like 11 p.m. on the Saturday, being like, it's completely rammed, completely rammed.
because I was at Comic-Con and my wife went with my mom and sister to go watch it at one of the most popular theaters out here in LA. And 5 minutes before, and the theater was actually being reported on, and she was there at the screening when this happened. 5 minutes before her showing of Barbie ended, like it was towards the ending, this alarm started going off, and everyone had to evacuate the theater, and it turned into like this crazy mess where it was just like jam packed on the escalators, and security had to get involved. And then they eventually, a couple hours later, allowed people back into the theater, but then the air conditioning wasn't working. And so then they had to some people were trying to get refunds. Some people just powered through regardless. I feel like I haven't seen Barbie yet because I was away this weekend, but I've seen Oppenheimer. And have you talked to anyone who saw both in the same day? I feel like that'd be such a terrible idea. They're so
Yeah,
drastically different that I think what you would watch prior, because he's kind of like, especially like a movie like Oppenheimer or even Barbie, which I've heard great things about, obviously, that you would kind of need to settle with. You might need to settle with Oppenheimer longer than you would with Barbie. And that's just my guess. I have no idea. I just feel like watching both back to back would make you, whatever the latter one is that you watch, would make it harder to appreciate that one, I think, just because of how different that is. Like, I was seeing TikToks of people who literally finished Barbie and are rushing to Oppenheimer right when the Universal logo is happening. And I just think that's just, I don't think I would want to do that to myself. I think it's funny, and I thought that was great marketing, and I thought it was cool that two separate studios managed to uplift each other to have successful box offices. At the same time, I don't think I would ever do that. I like watch two drastically different movies back to back like that. Did your editors or anyone tell you about their experience with that?
I'm pretty sure my editor Matt, he did them back to back. He loved it.
Oh, he did. He actually loved it. Oh,
he just loves being at the cinema. Any film he goes to see, he's like, "Oh, it's the best film I've ever seen." Right after it, or it's the worst film I've ever seen.
What did he watch first?
He watched Oppenheimer first.
That's the way to do it.
Came out saying, "Yeah, 3 hours of pure cinema." He said that was amazing. He said 3 hours felt like half an hour, and then just went straight into Barbie. Guy powered through, lovely bloke, and he kept us right. So I'm gonna read out, some of the stats for a Barbie, and I'm going to shake my head because I'm so angry I got it wrong. Barbie accomplishments. Biggest domestic opening of 2023. Booyah. Which I remember saying on the podcast, and I didn't say it would flop. Biggest opening ever for a female director. Biggest opening for a movie based on a toy. Biggest opening ever for Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Biggest opening weekend for a movie that isn't a sequel, remake, or superhero movie. So, completely killed it. Biggest idiot who said it would flop. So, yeah.
It surpassed the lifetime grosses of other female... Are you getting this from the Deadline article? That's what I just pulled up. That it surpassed the lifetime grosses of many other female-led movies. It's kind of crazy that the two biggest openings... of this year are Mario and Barbie of the year, which they're not superhero movies. They're obviously Mario's based on a classic video game, and Barbie's based on a classic toy but both have been long lasting franchises in the medium that they belong to prior to transitioning to cinema. And it's really cool to see what they did, and especially for Barbie, which I hear is a bit of an odd film, but people really love it. People love it a lot because I get that thing you were saying of everyone's like, it's an original film, and while it's based on an IP, I've heard the approach. I've been trying to avoid specifics because I want to watch it, and everyone's saying how good it is. I am hearing that it is a very original way of doing it, where they could have just had a safe alternative route to it, that they did take a very original approach. So I think that's really cool how well this movie's doing, which just shows you, man, people just want a good movie. People want original, even if you're doing that's what we mean by the superhero genre, is that what people want is they just want an original take, even if it is a comic book movie. Find a way to do it in an original way. That's why like Joker did so well, that's why the Batman exceeded so well. Do you want to go over the Oppenheimer facts too at some point?
Well, just a little comment on this. For the last couple of years, we've been saying what's going to happen when superhero movies die. And it's always been a case of like, well, what happened after the Western died? And I think we're now living through that period where superhero movies, they're not doing those crazy guaranteed box office numbers that they used to do. And we're seeing, what's going to be the next stage. And we're transitioning from that into... maybe things based on historical events or already established IPs that haven't been made into movies yet. And then we're watching them kind of play out. And I think that, I've often thought the next step after the comic book movie was going to be the good video game movie. And I thought it would be in the same way that, back, we had Superman and Batman, which were great, but there was a long period where a lot of comic book movies were absolutely terrible, like so bad. And I feel like that's something that happened with video game movies as well. And they are starting to get it right. They're starting to figure out what works with it. And I think that's going to be the next stage. And then alongside it, we'll have original IPs, auteur directors. I mean, going back to the 60s, even with the Western, if you look at what happened, the 60s was just like people just kind of were getting bored of the same thing happening over and over again. And there was not a massive crash, but movies just weren't pulling in what they were. And the people were just doing westerns to the death. And then, there was a big transitional stage. There was actually a strike in the 60s as well that changed a lot of things. And then after that came the 70s, where we had lots of auteur directors. Steven Spielberg came out, Martin Scorsese, people with their own original ideas that revitalized cinema. Things like The Godfather, you know what I mean? That they took things in a brand new direction, and we're kind of seeing history repeat itself. We're getting a strike, going into a transitional period, and then the big comic book movie thing that's been dominating everything. That's kind of dying off, and we're seeing some creative stuff being done, and you know what? It's good as well. It's good. And it's going to get people back in the cinema. They're excited to see it.
I think that's why Blue Beetle is not tracking well, because I think it looks fun. It does. It looks fun. And a lot of times I'll see comments on, like, when we cover trailers for stuff, whether it be the Marvels or Blue Beetle. I saw it with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I saw it with The Flash. It's like, there's always the comments where people are going, all I want is a fun movie. All I want is a fun movie. And I don't think, though, I think, they often, I've heard the phrase of results is the name of the game. Look at the numbers for things. And while, of course, there's that audience out there, like those comments, there is that audience that ultimately just wants a fun movie. And of course, that's the main thing I'd want to walk away with, is not the worst insult I could give to a movie is that it's boring. So I just want it to be fun as well. However, if we're talking about movies where they're spending so much, like ridiculous amounts of money now, and they need to have, and they have to like struggle and really like turn their way to the freaking break even line, not even the profit line, but just the break even line. Clearly, settling for just a fun, passable movie is not the name of the game anymore. They need it to be something that feels original, that does feel special. And I think that was communicated too in with what Barbie and Oppenheimer did. And plus, they just had brilliant marketing. But like I don't recall a time in our lifetime where we had two movies that managed to help uplift each other, edify one another, to this degree, because I think it really did help. And it's so cool to see for just two drastically different films and how well both of them did. And especially for Barbie, because Oppenheimer took up the premium screens, like the premium screens were a lot, like that's where a lot of Oppenheimer made its money from, was the premium screens, like IMAX and such. And for Barbie to not have that and still do this well is pretty freaking incredible. I'm really happy for the film. I can't wait to see it. I think it's really exciting, and I'm happy for how well it's doing without having them premium screens.
Yeah, and going back to what you said before, the budgets on superhero movies are absolutely crazy. Like, I don't know how they cost this much. Blue Beetle, 120 million budget.
More than Oppenheimer?
Yeah, Barbie, 145 million. Oppenheimer's said to be 100 million, but they are kind of contesting that. But it's not much more expensive, even at its highest, its highest estimate. It's not much more expensive than Blue Beetle. And that blows my mind because of, one, how good it looks. Two, it's a period piece, so that's expensive to do. And three, the cast.
The cast.
Now, not to slag off the Blue Beetle cast, yeah, but if they passed me in the street, I don't think I'd recognize them. If anyone from the Oppenheimer cast passed me in the street, I think I'd still be talking about it 30 years later, you know what I mean? Yeah. My wife, when Indiana Jones was getting filmed over here, she's seen Harrison Ford. She hasn't stopped talking about it. So I think if I seen Josh Hartnett walking down the street, I'd be like, this is 5 years ago to the day. I don't know why I've aged that much in 5 years, but 5 years ago to the day, Josh Hartnett was walking down that street right there. And you just think about, like, how has it only cost that much when you look at how much Blue Beetle is? I just can't get my head around it. And CGI must cost so much money, because I just don't get it. Like, again, no offense to the cast, and it's not even 3 hours long either. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It just
And
doesn't make sense to
Oppenheimer
me.
also built like new IMAX cameras for the black and
Yeah.
white. They had to build a new thing to make their movie happen. It is crazy how Blue Beetle costs more than that.
Yeah. And one thing that Christopher Nolan does in a lot of his films is he'll have cutaway shots to like something that's on screen for like 3 or 4 seconds, just
Mhm.
adding context to it. He does it a lot. But filming that shot takes, that takes money, but he'll do it so often in films where they just cut away to something. And it's like 3 hours of content there. There's a lot going on with the film. And I don't get how it's it costs either as much or less than Blue Beetle. And yeah, they need to sort their lives out.
Can I
Like
go
a
over,
fraction of a third of the Indiana Jones cost, and it's crazy.
uh, can I go over the Oppenheimer results? There's not as many facts as there were for Barbie, so I will not spend as much time. Christopher Nolan's third highest grossing opening weekend ever, both global and domestic, after the last two Dark Knight movies. The biggest global day and date opening weekend ever for a biopic, outpegging Bohemian Rhapsody, which stars Rami Malek, who's also in this movie. Beat Passion of the Christ. Yay. The biggest global opening for a drama since 2019, ahead of Creed 3. The highest grossing opening weekend for an R-rated film, beating out John Wick Chapter 4, my other favorite movie of the year. Biggest IMAX opening for Christopher Nolan, which is crazy to hear, and biggest IMAX for a Universal title in US and Canada. It's cool how it wasn't the biggest opening, but biggest opening IMAX for Nolan. He really is the name associated with it. Third biggest international box office opening for a Nolan film, in like for likes behind Dark Knight Rises and Dark Knight. And the biggest non-superhero opening for Nolan, obviously, and the biggest opening day for a Nolan film in 33 markets, as including Saudi Arabia, India, Netherlands, Argentina, and Belgium. So this movie is doing really, really well, and I'm happy to see it because both you and Paul and I usually see the movies before Paul, and I'll give my opinion, and then Paul usually comes back with a different opinion than myself. And this is the first time in a long time where, as I told him, I loved it, and then he came back and he loved it too. And I was like, we finally agree. We're on the same page. We don't have any differentiating qualms about it. So yeah, I'm really happy.
I don't agree with you laughing at Passion of the Christ before, Greg. I noticed you did a little yay when you said he beat Passion of the Christ.
I've saw Passion of the Christ twice in the theaters, man. I gave my money.
You better pay again. Otherwise you go into hell. Now, I just thought it was a masterclass in editing. I really did. I thought just from the beginning, right from the off, the way that Nolan spliced things together, you got the idea of what was going on in Oppenheimer's head. I think if you didn't know the backstory, like his entire life, it might have been a bit difficult to follow. But knowing someone who's well versed in history, of course, I followed it really well. I thought they laid out the certain segments of his life in a really good order as well. It's just classic Nolan, where he's not telling the story chronologically, but he's laying things out in events that kind of build and flow really well together to give it almost this like locomotion feel. And even the score itself, it's kind of like, it's almost like a train, like powering away in the background, like going. And you have moments where they cut to people's feet tapping, clickings, the countdown before they set off the Trinity test. There's just lots of things in the background where it's constantly feels like it's building towards something. And yeah, just the ending of the movie as well, brilliant. Builds right off the beginning where you've got Oppenheimer looking at puddles and raindrops falling in it, and then to close out the film with them staring at the pond, watching the raindrops fall in that, and then imagining it. It's like it's so well put together. The whole film's like a chain reaction, I feel. It starts off with a little thing, and then, lots of crazy dynamic things happen throughout the movie that will build towards this big realization at the end that he might be the destroyer of worlds, because he's set off something in motion that's probably not going to get stopped. Everyone's going to get their hands on the bomb eventually. They're going to build hydrogen bombs. They're then going to have to build more bigger bombs because of the hydrogen bomb, and it's just going to set off this chain of escalation that could possibly lead to the end of the world. And I thought, even today, I was I'm making a perfect scene video for the ending, and just thinking about how some of the characters were used as well. Strauss is a really, really good inclusion, because I've realized that he sort of represents Russia. So he sees these, two people off in the corner talking away, and then gets paranoid because he doesn't know what they're talking about. And this causes him to almost strike from the dark and put his own plans in place. And I was thinking, that's a lot how Russia acted. They saw the nuclears getting developed off in this country that, was their friend at one point, but they wouldn't acknowledge them when it came to that. And so what they started doing is using their own tactics like espionage, and stuff like that to basically get the secrets of how to build a nuke. And just seeing how like characters are used like that, it's just such a next level take on something. And for Nolan to have written and directed this, it's absolutely insane. The guy's next level, I think.
He created an epic, haunting, harrowing drama. You saw this in IMAX, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know what the screen size of yours is. I saw it at the Universal IMAX, which I really wanted to do because that's where Nolan tests his movies. That's like he even had a thing where he was like, "Here's the perfect seat." I sat one row behind the perfect seat. I missed the perfect seat. It was already taken. But I have seen every Nolan film in IMAX since The Dark Knight. I saw Dark Knight like 9 or 10 times in IMAX because I was just obsessed with it. It was the first one to really use that translation. And I thought that his usage of it was done in such a unique way, because normally when you do the scenes with the IMAX shots, they're used for like the grand scenes, the big action scenes or whatever, and here there were so many just character-driven, dialogue-driven scenes where he would use, of course, he used it for the spectacle moments, the cool space particles, whatever it may be. He used it for those moments, but I loved how he's become such a master at his craft with understanding IMAX, to the point where he was just using so much to create a better, more intimate film for this drama, scenes that were just dialogue moments, and knowing when to use those IMAX shots to immerse you even more. It has this effect. To me, he's better at what 3D hopes to achieve. With where 3D wants to put you in the movie, 3D wants to immerse you into it. He knows how to do it without 3D glasses, and that experience of being thrusted into the perspective of Oppenheimer, because when it cuts between being in color, the two timelines, with it being in color, which is more of this subjective point of view through Oppenheimer's perspective, and then you have the black and white version, which is not as subjective a point of view, that's more from Lewis Strauss's perspective. Knowing how to intertwine with those, I remember like watching Dunkirk, and I didn't quite catch on to that right away, and I think a lot of people didn't understand the timeline. Granted, he's kind of between way more timelines there. I thought his usage here was excellent, and I loved the approach of, because I was thinking to myself before watching it, like it's a 3-hour film. Everyone's talking about this being an IMAX experience. I don't think they're going to show the events of Hiroshima. Obviously, I've heard about the nuclear test that they would be showing here in the film. Like, is that the only exciting part of this movie that we're going to see on screen of the spectacle? Is just this one, the one explosion? And what I thought he did so well, especially from talking about quantum physics, of how energy is so physical. Energy is physical. That's a big part of quantum physics, that it is a physical thing. And when you're in Oppenheimer's mindset of watching him, the way he visualizes atoms, the way he visualizes particles, the way he visualizes the stars. It's just something that you don't see on screen, and you're watching literally the I mean, like the law of attraction and the law of action into place, where you're hopping into his mindset and you're seeing how he sees things, and you're watching the creation of that manifest, which is in and of itself quantum physics. The way he is portraying Oppenheimer, like he is the embodiment of quantum physics, which was such a radical way of science and thinking back then. And you're watching that come to fruition. And of course, like the haunting themes of this was going to happen, like that was the whole thing they were trying to beat, was that the Nazis they're going to be trying to develop this themselves. Like they needed to create this. And one of my favorite things about it was, obviously it starts off with a man with good intentions, and you see how him being Jewish and what's happening in World War II, how affected he is by this. He kept it so character driven. And by the time the bomb is created, one of the most eerie moments to me, which I don't really see being talked about, is when he's waiting around for the call about Hiroshima. He's waiting for the call about the bomb, and he's not being informed. And he finally gets Matt Damon on the line, and he's asking him, about being there, about wanting to be present for stuff. And Matt Damon's just like, why? He just like throws him away, like, you're not needed anymore. And this was the warning sign he was receiving the entire film, that there's going to come a point in time where they're not going to need you anymore. Like they need you until they don't. And that is so much of the journey of what he goes on, of being needed and being he's such an important figure. And all he's been known at is, the creator of destroyer of worlds. Right. And you see that obviously that wasn't his intent, nor is it exactly a movie where you're just like, oh, I feel sorry for Oppenheimer, because he's aware of the fact that he needed to create this. This was going to happen. This needed to happen. At the same time, he's aware of what he has created. And like you said, I love what you said about it being a chain reaction, because that was the warning sign he was getting the entire movie. This progressive chain reaction that kept happening, and of course, this chain reaction was bound to happen. So yeah, it's to me, it's an unsettling film, but damn, it's also like beautiful and a great cautionary tale. And I think, especially for the warning times of what AI and the capability of what AI is, it also still feels timely, for what's going on in our current state. It's a very different type of subject, but same thing. It's like AI is bound to happen. But there is a way where this can really get ahead of ourselves, and it can get out of hand, and it could be used as a dominant force that could ultimately set humanity in a darker direction. So, yeah, I loved it, man. I thought it was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, just thinking about like how he goes from this massive personality that everyone wants to follow. Like he's part of the Communist Party. Well, he's not part of it, but he moves in those circles. But everyone's enamored with him, like women and everything. And then he starts talking about the teachers' union and throwing like he's talking on pedestals and stuff, and people are really looking up to him. And then that translates over to the Los Alamos desert, and he feels like he's in control of everything. But as soon as that test is successful, just completely cut out, and you can almost feel like the remorse, like, oh crap, I've built something that people can now replicate. I can no longer control how it's used. And even like Hitler at that point had died, and they were just kind of like, well, Japan haven't surrendered yet. Let's go and drop the bomb. And it's like, he has no say in that at all. He doesn't get to decide if they drop it once, if they drop it twice, if they're going to use it in future warfare, if the Soviets get their hands on it. Once you've invented it and it's out there, it's everyone's, and he no longer can control it, no matter what. Even saying, we shouldn't build hydrogen bombs. The government ostracize him and throw him on trial. They say it's not a trial, but he gets put on a hearing. His security clearance is stripped. He gets almost branded a traitor, and all that for just saying, "Look, guys, be careful. I think we should put things in place to stop us building nukes." and it's insane. Like just that shot at the end, you just feel the regret and the worry and the anxiety and almost the kind of like, oh crap, what have I done? I think it's just so. I really can't wait to rewatch it. There's so many things going on with it thematically.
At the auditorium when he's giving the
It's like a
speech.
panic attack, yeah.
Yeah, he's giving. It's like the social anxiety moment. Yeah, where he's giving this He's giving this speech, and it's almost like propaganda in a way, and everyone's like cheering, but all he can see is the horror. And I love this shot where the racked focus on him, and behind him, it's just like it's shaking, and then seeing the horrors of how he's witnessed. Like he just can't stop thinking about what he's done to just people, you know.
Yeah.
I thought that was an excellent moment as well. There are some people who I've seen are like, oh, I wish we saw the Hiroshima bombing moment. I don't really know exactly what the desire is to have seen it, if it's for to really drive home the emotional affect, or is it for wanting to see a spectacle of horror? I don't really know what it is that people really want from wanting to see that. I think the way they decided to do it here was, for me at least, was just as effective because they kept it intimate, for seeing its own creator being so affected by the disaster that he has created, and seeing the the disillusionment of how the government treated him too. It's brilliant, and the performances are so good from everyone here. I love how it's like a cameo fest. It's more than The Flash, right? Like it's just not every 10 minutes there would be like, hey, you're about to meet, and then here's a new famous person. I didn't even realize what the entire cast list was. I only knew of a few names, so I was constantly being surprised by who kept showing up on screen. And even if they were there for a tiny bit, even if they didn't have one scene or whatever, they were always so effective. Everyone made an impression. Everyone made an impact. Robert Downey Jr., I think, gave some of his best working years, and especially it doesn't take much work to start looking past the fact that it's Robert Downey Jr. You know, I thought he really immersed himself into that role, and I loved Matt Damon in it. Josh Hartnett, between Black Mirror and this, I think he's really repositioned himself to getting a lot more work again, to being a great dramatic, because he's so good here too, and he was so good in that Black Mirror episode as well. The Safdie bro, remember which Safdie brother it was? I forget which one, but he's awesome. And freaking Jason Clarke as this aggressive ass
Benny
lawyer.
Safdie.
Benny Safdie, yeah. Everyone was so goddamn good, and I loved Emily Blunt towards the end. In the beginning, I had issues with the way the movie wrote the women, because they just kind of showed up to be depressed, complaining, crying. But towards the last half of the movie, I thought Emily Blunt, the way her character was portrayed, I thought she had one of the best moments to me, and when she was being interrogated. And she gave us kind of a cathartic experience of what she's pining for, Oppenheimer, stand up, fight back, stand up, fight back, Robert, come on. And the way she handled that scene, I thought was so good too. Everyone was so freaking good. My only little qualm, and I didn't hear anything about this, and I saw that some people are feeling this way. It doesn't take up a lot of the movie, so it's not a big deal to me. My only little qualm, and I want to be careful of my words here to make sure we don't affect monetization on this video, is the way sexuality was handled in certain scenes. And that was the one part. It's one of those cases where I have a bit of a dichotomy about it, because I understand the context very well. Of course, the context, I'm not going to be here and say it wasn't necessary to have that, because it is such an integral part of Oppenheimer's story, and the idea too of the beginning of his two greatest sins, in a way, with Florence Pugh when he first sleeps with her, where the quote the Freer learns about the history of worlds,
slips it in.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with him doing that. I'll never look at that quote in the same way again. I'm slipping it in as he says that, but
it's a bit on the nose, and it kind of registered as a little silly to me. And then even the one in the interrogation room where you're seeing it from Emily Blunt's perspective, I got it. I'm not going to say I didn't get it. I just thought the execution of it was not. It wasn't oogly. It wasn't. It wasn't exactly distasteful. It just registered as a little corny to me. It registers a little cheesy in the way it was handled, and I thought that needed a little bit more TLC in order to make it more effective and not like it would pull me out rather than pull me more in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the only part of it, but it doesn't take up a lot of the movie. But other than that, I thought the movie, if you just let it wash over you, because I know some people have a hard time adjusting to the editing of the film because it does move really fast. But if you just kind of surrender to the experience, I thought it was a really fast moving 3 hours. People have issues with the last 40 minutes of the film, feeling like we didn't really need all that core stuff. I'm like, I think that's such a necessary part of that part of the story is so important. That is such an important part. I thought it was totally necessary.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said before about people saying we needed to see Hiroshima. I don't think we did. I think, you don't, there's lots of things that you don't actually see in this movie. For example, you don't see the Soviets trying to steal the bomb. You don't see the Nazis. You encounter Heisenberg at the start, but once, he's off making the bomb for the Germans, you don't see him again. It's not framed like a sort of they're racing against each other. It's all shown from Oppenheimer's perspective, and I think that's why they didn't show Hiroshima, because if you had him going like, well, what happened? And then you cut to it and you see it happens, it kind of almost robs the character a bit because he's just completely shut out. And I don't feel like you would have that feeling he was shut out if you actually saw it happen. I think you'd be like, well, we know what happened there. But even as an audience, we're kind of shut out to it, and we're just getting told very very matter of fact. Here's exactly what happened. They dropped the bomb. 3 days later, they dropped another bomb. That's it. You're out of the picture. He's like, but I've got blood on my hands. It's like, oh, whatever. Shut up, you crybaby. Just get out. He's completely dismissed. And I think showing that would have probably, you didn't need it. I think just keeping it purely on Oppenheimer's perspective, that was the smartest way to go about it. Because, and what I've seen on Twitter was people crying, the representation's missing for Japanese people. But, like, is it good representation to just have loads of Japanese people getting killed? And I feel like the criticism there would have been, oh, Christopher Nolan, he's a white man. He casts nothing but white people in his films. And the only time he has, an Asian person in this film, they're getting killed. And I think just not showing it was the best way to go about it. I think either way he was going to get criticized. And the smarter move was to just keep things solely rooted in Oppenheimer's perspective. Not have, the horror of it and have it more being an imagined one, where he's sort of and even in the auditorium, I think that gives the feeling enough. You know what I mean? Where you see the bright flash of light, people's skin melting away, and then he ends up walking through and stepping on that body, and then outside he's seeing people being sick who weren't, immediately affected by the blast. And that to me is a lot more subtle, keeps things rooted in the perspective, and then you haven't got the whole big thing of like, oh, it was so gory seeing that nuke on screen. Like, we've seen nukes enough, and I just don't feel they needed it. Now, speaking of nukes, what did you think of the actual bomb that they've been hyping up for months now as being like, they made a real nuke and fired it off?
I think some people wanted it to be bigger or something. I don't know exactly what people wanted.
I wanted it to be wider.
Yeah, I think people really wanted the mushroom cloud effect. I think that's what people really wanted. I thought the sequence though itself was so impactful. Like the way the sound design of that moment too. Like this movie has this jarring sound effect design in certain moments where it's almost like jump scary, what it's done to enhance the idea of like perspective with Oppenheimer, especially of being lost in his own world and then being brought back to reality, And I thought that moment too, where the way they took out some sound and then that bang were the after effect of when the wind started blowing through everyone. And I thought the way that sequence was done, like the build up to it of whether or not it'll go wrong, like that whole line, it's in the trailer. And I thought it was so much better here in the actual movie itself of the less than a 0% close to almost a 0% chance that they'll rip a hole in the atmosphere. That they could destroy the world. Of God, what you want it to be at zero, but it just puts you in that moment of what a decision you got to make. Like you might not just kill everyone here, you might end the world right now. And like how to make that decision is so terrifying. So I thought the build up to it was awesome. I thought it still looked gorgeous on screen. And maybe if it did go bigger, it could have driven home that effect of how, because, we've seen so many explosions in movies before. We've seen so much of that maybe it didn't completely drive home the effect of, oh, wow, if they really, especially if you're uninitiated to understanding what any of the atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, if you don't know anything about it, maybe as a newcomer to this, you're not really understanding just how powerful this is based off the explosion that they do show on screen. But I thought the way they captured the flames is, yeah, you do want that wider shot. I understand from an audience member, but the connection to the flames and how close those shots were, again, it was all to capture it from Robert Oppenheimer's perspective. And I thought that's why those shots worked so well. So to me, I was more than satisfied with how it was done. Of course, there is that side of me. I'm like, it would have been cool to see the mushroom cloud, though. It would have been cool to see that full wide shot. But I always got YouTube to look it up.
I think the issue with it was they put a lamppost in front of it to kind of give it scale. But the actual stem of the explosion itself just looks so skinny. And for it then to knock people back, I couldn't see that happening.
Yeah.
But might be wrong. But yeah, just to me, the build-up was incredible, and then you had the silence, and then it was like a little fart, and then everyone went flying. Probably going to get shit in the comments for saying it was like a little fart, but that's just kind of how I felt. But other than that, loved the movie. Glad to see it's doing well. And you know what? It looks like it's going to do well for a long time, because I've been looking ahead to the future, and there's a lot of IMAX showings are completely sold out for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Someone posted a tweet before saying, I managed to book the only empty seat I could get for a 70mm showing of Oppenheimer, and that was on August 6th. So you're looking at weeks in advance that they've got this whole thing sold out. Those are premium tickets as well. And yeah, I think it's going to do really well.
I got my tickets many, many, many weeks ago, and it is several weeks from now. I did not. It's out here in Los Angeles. It sold out IMAX so fast. So it's crazy because they did. There was all that talk about it taking up Mission Impossible's premiums, which we did not talk about. Its box office dip. But it did. It took up the Mission Impossible screenings, and it panned out because early on it's sold out weeks in advance, all the weeks. It's doing really well. It's gonna make a lot of money, and I think Nolan too is. The way how he redefined the genre, like when Batman Begins came out, everyone was like, we need to do more origin stories that are darker, like Batman Begins. I think in some way, people are going to try to do more biopics now, too. I just feel like take the right lessons from how it's done, please. Don't take the right lessons.
Don't copy.
Find why, really understand why this works. Before just going, we need another Oppenheimer movie. We need another
Heisenberg.
Yeah. What'd you think of Gary Oldman, man? Did you like this movie? Did you think of Gary Oldman? And
I liked him.
Yeah, he played Churchill, and it's funny because it's the same time frame too. He's got his own little cinematic universe going on here.
Kang. He's like the Kang
of biopics, of World War II biopics.
I thought he was great. I always think he's really good. Yeah, just blown away by it. Pun not intended there. Loads of people have said that over the last couple of days anyway. They've been like, I'm blown away by it. And I'm like, yeah, it's stupid, but I've just said it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Want to go see it again. Love Christopher Nolan. I am kind of teetering on, do I do a breakdown of this, or is it kind of a touchy subject, but great film. Really, really glad that the weekend's been good for cinemas as well. Cinemas packed, cinemas back. Great work, guys.
COVID's over. It's done.
Yeah, you proved me wrong. Very happy to be proven wrong on it. Glad that they're both doing well. I personally thought they were going to eat each other, and I thought it was going to be I thought the conversation we'd be having this week was they shouldn't have released these on the same weekend. But the arguments there that they might not have done as well if they'd not been released on the same weekend. They built a cultural movement. Everyone got involved. Everyone was happy to go to the cinema. And I think some people enjoyed the movies, some people didn't. But it's good to see cinemas doing well. They've had a tough time. There's a tough time coming with the strikes. And I'm glad they've had this win.
I think we do have to address before we end, though, really quick, is that the one that maybe shouldn't have released is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Yeah, maybe.
It has dropped 64%, so it might not even make its money back. Like this might.
It's expensive film.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
this was the big concern, and I don't think anyone was really. It's crazy because the Mission Impossible films none of them have crossed $1 billion. Like they throw so much money at them, and they make money, and they've progressively made more money. Other than Part 3, like Part 2 is still like, I believe, profit wise and whatever is. I think I might be wrong, but I think that is still one of the more lucrative profits that they've ever had. Part 3 was the one that was a little bit worrisome, but Dead Reckoning Part 1 is not doing anywhere near as well as they hope. Even if it was just the same budget as Fallout, it's still not doing anywhere near as well as they hoped.
So I'm reading the stats here. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 has crossed 200 million overseas. It gives it a 300 million global total, and it was 55 million at the last weekend gone, which gives it a minus 64.6% second weekend drop. So it's eyeing a 620 million to 670 million global run, which, I'm not sure of all the ins and outs, but at least it's not a massive bomb. It might, it's not going to turn a big profit, but yeah. I purely think it was just down to the bad release time. I really do. I thought it was a great film, but no one's talking about it anymore.
No, I mean, especially to come like before Barbie and Oppenheimer, which are original properties, and they are making there's such a conversation piece. Whereas Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, while a good film, it is still ultimately like, a good Mission Impossible installment, but it's not as anywhere near of a conversation piece as these other two films are. Which is a bummer. It's a bummer. I always want these movies to succeed. I love the franchise so much. So hopefully,
Tommy Cruise, he knew this was coming as well because he was a bit annoyed that they were going to be getting all the premium screens. So nothing you can do, mate. Barbenheimer. Taking out everyone, mate. Taking out everyone. But any final thoughts?
No, man. I can't wait for Spider-Man 4 with Thomas Hayden Church and Miles Morales. I can't wait for that.
Confirmed. We've confirmed it.
Confirmed it here for everyone.
Confirmed in the title.
With a question mark, though.
A question mark. Confirmed?
Question mark?
Yeah, exactly. So, anything on the horizon for you, Greg?
No, thanks, man. We are good. I'm good. I'm good, man. Did you send me a message here?
I just sent you some stats and a picture of the atom bomb, so you could have a look at it.
I didn't realize that.
But we're past that now.
Yeah, we're way past that.
So if you've been paying attention to the breakdown community, you might have seen that MT was sadly let go at New Rock Stars last week. I had a word with a guy. He's going to do some stuff for us. So keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for that. Really excited to see. He's got a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 breakdown coming out. So I'm excited to see what happens.
I'm excited. I'm excited for that, man. MT is a true talent. All right, man.
He's going to embarrass me.
Yeah. Probably. All right, man. I'm ready to close out now.
Me too. Thanks for supporting us, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Forgot to like, subscribe. Love yous.
Peace.